Hey there, introverts and deep thinkers. Welcome to Introverts Unmuted, the podcast where we prove that quiet doesn't mean invisible and deep thoughts deserve a mic. If you've ever felt drained by small talk, mastered the art of sneaking out of the room, or even wished the world understood the magic of solitude, this is your space. We dive into everything from navigating social energy to embracing creativity, confidence, and the unique power of being an introvert. So get comfy, plug in, and let's turn up the volume on our quiet confidence. I'm Amber Hansel, and this is Introverts Unmuted. Today, I am speaking with Kelsey. How are you today?
I'm lovely. I have my tea. I'm ready. I'm in my introvert space. We're good to go. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. So you are a data strategist and founder of Foresight HQ. So tell me, first of all, data strategist, that sounds super corporate, and I am sure you started in that space.
You are not wrong. I have over a decade of corporate analytics experience. I'm an MIT certified data analyst, but I'm actually a licensed marriage and family therapist. I started my life in psychology and statistics, doing studies on what help couples have long-term relationships. My undergraduate thesis was literally couples that play together, stay together, because I met my partner in World of Warcraft, the video game. But in my corporate career, when I started my internship, I was specializing in adolescents, specifically adolescent females who had experienced sexual assault that resulted in substance use. And so it was a very, very heavy topic. I took it home with me a lot. It was, mentally taxing. And when I started to burn out, my agency asked if I would be interested in transitioning to the administrative side of things. And that's where I started my data career. And I am so incredibly thankful because I got to help those same people, but differently. It was a really lovely experience.
And that is so beautiful. And I love how there was a recognition of burnout and that there was like, this is not working for me anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And that is really where Foresight HQ sort of was built from as well. So when I transitioned into working with entrepreneurs, it was really, okay, how can I bring corporate level analytics to small businesses, right? Because most of the time it's out of price range, even for folks, in the $250,000 and above range. And when I would work with those folks, it was typically, I'm trying all the things, right? That seems like our plight. I'm trying all the things, but I don't know what's working when what's not. And that's really where I brought my analytics down to the small business world was, well, let me go through your numbers and figure that out. And as I was working with folks one-on-one, I realized that one of the places that they were burning out the most was their Instagram DMs. And it just happened to be where my folks were sort of doing a lot of sales. And when their ManyChat would pop off, I literally had a client who would get 300 DMs, and mixed in there would be folks that didn't respond to a ManyChat, that actually wanted to work with them, but they couldn't dig through all the DMs to find those people. So I said, you know what? I got some skills I can use, right? And so I built Foresight HQ, which is a proprietary AI that goes through, reads those DMs, and decides what's a ManyChat, what's an actual lead, and scores it for you and puts it in a dashboard.
And that is amazing. Because I was doing, before my coaching time, I was doing lead gen and engagement, and I was in people's DMs. I was in coaches' DMs going through messages, responding. I know. I, started conversations and built that relationship and going through and tracking it all. And it's a process.
And most of the time, the folks I work with don't realize how much of a process it is. I mean, truthfully, that's the basis of all of our burnout, right? We don't realize how much of a process is. We go in, we do the thing, and we just sit there with our hands on our cheeks going, what did I just get myself into? I'm so glad that you said that, because you said a word that's so incredibly important to everything I do, and that is building the relationships. Because we hear the jargon of trust recession and touch points and blah, blah. all that translates to is the word relationships,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
And as introverts, we're really, really good at relationships. We're just not great at starting them.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really about building that. And when we build that relationship, then the trust happens and then the sale happens and all of that. Because as introverts, those meaningful connections, that is what we love. Like,
that's our bread and butter. Absolutely.
that is exactly, like, we get into it. And that's what we do. It's breaking through that small talk point, and which I love to talk about too, is just starting that conversation, breaking through that small talk and getting to the meat and potatoes of the conversation.
I don't know if you ever experienced this when you were in those DMs for folks, but I had very good business friend of mine the other day asked me, because I coded Foresight myself, right? Like, I'm the lead developer and everything, so I get to play when I want to do. She's like, does Foresight give me like starter conversations? I was like, tell me more. And she got a couple of inquiries within a very short period of time of folks that had been referred to her. And she didn't know how to respond. It was that first overthinking moment. And I know I do this myself of, well, do I tell them the price right away? Do I just ask them more about what they want? Like, what is it that I need to respond with to build this relationship, but from someone who reached out to me directly?
Yeah.
Did you ever get that?
Yeah, absolutely. There is this like weird factor of, you don't want to just word vomit all over them. And then they're like, whoa, I'm out. So,
Exactly.
because you don't want to overwhelm them. Right. So really, I say, get curious, start asking a question and say, oh my gosh, I'm so excited that you are, wanting this information. What's like piqued your interest? What brought, oh, they messaged the word. What about that? Or was it that specific piece of content? Relate it back to that piece of content. Go, hey, what in that did you like? When, oh my gosh, I have to send you a message, because that, then you're like getting into it. And then you're like, I'm getting to know them more. Where are they coming from? And what kind of buyer are they?
Yes, I love buyer types. And the buyer psychology piece is really where I settle. Like, that's really where my heart is specifically, I focus on buyer signals. So what I mean by that is like the triggers that say, okay, now it's time to send them the link, or now it's time to actually start talking pricing with them. And that's when you know that you need to really lean into that conversation. But there's so much psychology that comes before that as well. That's really exciting to work with.
Yeah, exactly. So how do you kind of work with that in understanding that customer psychology to get them to even send the triggers, to get in there?
Yeah. So it's a lot like what you said. We have to recognize what kind of buyer someone is. And there's going to be and there's plenty of folks that have named it. I'm not quite so fancy with names. I just kind of, it is what it is. But there's your folks that are going to immediately reach out, start asking your sort of hard-hitting questions. What's the price? When can I start? What's the implementation time? Like, they need all the info right up. Then you have your folks who really are just going to go off of their intuition, if this feels right. And so usually, and there's several others, but usually you can tell by that first way that they interact. And that's something that introverts in general, and particularly neurodivergent introverts like myself, are pretty good at reading the room, right? And so you're going to get a feeling in that first statement, especially if you follow up with a question of, oh, that's amazing. What made you reach out to me? I'm really curious. First of all, you're letting them talk about themselves, which is incredibly important in all sales conversations. You always let the person talk about themselves first. You do not start with talking about yourself. But then you can start to feel out whether they're looking for more information because they need that to make a decision, whether they have already chosen you and are just making sure that you're the right fit, or whether they are choosing between several options and maybe you're just having difficulty making a decision and you need to guide them more.
Mhm.
Typically in the clients that I've worked with, you tend to attract a particular kind of person to you, one of these different categories. And likely if you're listening here, you're like, oh my gosh, I get all of blank, right?
Yeah.
You'll have the rest sprinkled in, but you're going to get really good at working through that one type of buyer because your content, regardless of how you're doing your content, likely attracts that particular kind of buyer. So once you
Yes.
know what kind it is, it's really working with their needs. It's the exact kind of things that you're doing as a coach. It's working through their needs and guiding them to make the best decision for themselves. And you're looking for triggers like asking questions about price, asking questions about, okay, I see the implementation in my head. What's the timeline looking like? Or saying words like, I want to do this by a certain day or season. Those are those triggers that say, okay, this person has made the decision and it's your job now to take them across the next step.
Yeah, it's really about just guiding them and going, hey, I'm talking to this type of person. Do they need more of a relationship before, or are they just, and it's really important. And actually, I was just trying to find, I have an episode on here all about buyer types that I will link in the show notes so that you can go and really dig into the different 4 types and how it actually relates to your introverted nature. So that's definitely a whole other, but it's so interesting. The conversations can really, you can lead them in a certain way once you understand that psychology.
Mm-hmm.
So when someone's like, oh my gosh, this is really interesting, I haven't thought about it like that, how can they go start analyzing their conversations?
So when you're in the midst of a conversation with someone, and you're likely in the midst of several different ones, so we want to acknowledge that it can be hard to keep track of where you're at with folks. But you're looking for indicators that where they're at in their customer journey. So we think of a customer journey a lot. We use that terminology, but the way I grew up in psychology, you're really looking at stages of change, right? They're effectively the same thing. So you're looking for that that willingness to change. So what is it? And this is what you're analyzing within the conversation you've had and where the questions you're trying to ask lead. It's, are they ready for change? If they're ready for change, what effort are they willing to put in for that change, whether it be monetary, time, resources, things like that? You're looking for their resource management aspect. Mm-hmm. And then once you've identified that they are ready for change and they have the resources that you or your program are going to require, then the next step is, what do they need in their brain to feel supported in making that decision? And then you're literally just providing what those supports are. So for example, one of the things that Foresight HQ does is it starts to analyze things like frequency and urgency. Once those 2 things go up, the number of times that they're messaging you and how quickly they message when you respond, those sorts of signals start to lead you towards, okay, this person is in more of a buying space. Words like around pricing indicators or decision indicators, and words that lead towards recognizing that they sort of already pictured the end result you can provide them. That's where the analysis comes in. So if you're doing it for yourself, you can look for literally the exact same thing. It's just, I have automated it because I couldn't handle doing it, honestly. But it really can be done on a sheet of paper. It is a little rubric for yourself. Is, where are they in their stage of change? Do they have the resources? And what indicators am I seeing?
Yeah, and it's so simple when we decide to break it down and go, we are just talking to people over coffee with this
Exactly.
And then we're just providing a service.
Exactly.
That's what we're doing. And that relationship, even if they say no, if they say whatever they say, that relationship is still there.
Mhm. And typically, when someone has reached out to you, there's a reason. And whether you've got some, co-complications of rejection sensitivity disorder going on, or, whether you've got imposter syndrome, there's a lot of internal things that can impact the way we see someone reaching out to us. But if we're talking specifically about conversations in your DMs, it's more likely, especially as introverts, that we are receiving outreach, whether it's a comment or a DM. And that is a whole heck of a lot of validation in and of itself. And I've found that when I help clients sit in recognition of that validation, that this person actually wanted to reach out to you, it reduces some of that desperation energy that comes with how do I even respond? This, I'm going to use my Southern voice for a second. Honey, this person wanted you, right? So sitting in that validation for just a quick moment, recognizing that this person wanted you, took the time to reach out to you. You've likely communicated that you're an introvert through your content. So this person is likely attracted to that kind of person anyway. If you're being authentic in your content, you don't have to pretend to be someone in your DMs. There's just so much that you can sort of ease away at the beginning of that conversation just by recognizing that they reached out to you.
Yeah. And I think that's where I talk a lot about quiet leadership and quiet power. And that right there is that. When you realize that you are being magnetic by being your true introverted neurodivergent self, you will attract those people and really going, I am worthy of that and I deserve that. And that's the validation. I also talk a lot about stretching yourself and reaching out to people, and not in like this, hey, this is what I have. Look, no, we're not doing that. That scares us.
Yep.
We're not doing that. We are reaching out. Maybe we are replying to an Instagram story to someone. Oh my gosh, I love that beach. Where's it at? I am such a beach girl. Oh my gosh, what are you having in your coffee? Starting the conversations that can go further.
Yes. And what's funny is I had to do this for myself. So I built a social media management tool and I'm terrible at social media. I'm just going to throw that out there. It happens. But I couldn't. So from a technical perspective, foresight can only work when someone is already in your DMs. But via Meta's rules, I can't DM someone from foresight first. I have to do it from the Instagram app. So I was like, well, how the heck am I going to get into people's DMs so that it's in foresight and I can start tracking it? Because I can't do this for myself. My client, it was story replies because those are DMs. And it was such a lovely exercise to go through. And I treated it almost like speed dating.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, story reply. And so I just followed a bunch of people that were appropriate for me to follow. And I started responding to stories as though I was, sitting at that little table, trying to find out all that I could about them. But we're all there. We're all on the same platform just to learn about one another.
Yeah.
And so having that baseline was really beautiful. And it worked really super well because I started getting replies. And then I would ask questions and get curious, just like you're saying. And it was really lovely to then have a way to analyze those DMs that just kept me up to date with where folks were. But it all started from releasing some of that pressure and avoiding getting myself overwhelmed. But like you said, it was the quiet leadership.
Yeah. And I think we have to, when we reach out because we are doing it, there is like an attachment to it. When we decide to cut that cord and detach from that and just go, hey, I'm just making a new friend. Hey, I'm just chatting with someone. I'm getting curious, whether you're like, hey, this is an experiment, this is for data, however you need to go about it, that is where things change and go, I'm just gonna, instead of I'm gonna make a sale today,
Right.
it's how can I shift someone's perspective today?
Yes. And that's a beautiful way to look at it. I love the way you phrased that, because if we're looking at this again through that psychological lens, you are always going to get further building a relationship without expectations. We've all been in the situation where we know that we're being sold to, even though a product has not been mentioned.
Yeah.
We have all been there. And so we recognize, right, that building a relationship on mutual benefit, because the hope, Jenna Harding says this all the time, right? The hope is that someone is going to be so darn excited about your product that they are telling you they want to hand you money. And if it feels icky to you, remember that they are excited to hand you money because you're giving them something so amazing. And so we're building a relationship for mutual benefit. If that leads to a sale, great. If it leads to a friendship, great. If it leads to them realizing that they don't need your thing, also great.
Yep.
All about building that relationship.
Yeah, and I always say you don't know who they know. And that is where the community starts to build, because they might refer you and go, oh my gosh, you and so should meet. You should talk to so. Or all of a sudden you have new followers from this person because there is collaboration. Maybe you're on a podcast together. Maybe you're doing a blog collaboration together. What does that look like in the overall scheme? I'm like, sometimes people are like, oh, it's not my ideal client. I'm like, that's nice, but you can still talk to them. They are a human. It is more than just your ideal client. It is a whole community of space that needs to be welcomed in. And that's how there is community over competition, is really when you embrace everybody and not go, not you, not you.
Exactly. When we're able to focus on each individual as an individual, but doing it in a way that is somewhat scalable. So, right, scaling the unscalable is the new jargon. But it is always going to serve your bottom line better. The ROI is there. And I'm speaking as the data analyst here, not the psychologist for a moment. The ROI on building a direct relationship with the customer is always going to be higher than the ROI of attempting to get new leads. It's always cheaper to convert someone already in your audience than it is to try to grab somebody new and hope that they immediately purchase. That just doesn't happen anymore. I think I mentioned earlier, touch points, right, is the new jargon. Well, we're up to 21 touch points needed. And it's some of the studies coming out are showing us that it's more. And so every message you send someone in a DM is another touch point. You don't count that whole DM as a single touch point. Every comment that you do on their thing, every story reply, those are part of your 21 touch points. So for those of us who have difficulty sort of going out into the world and doing mass marketing is what I'll call it, we get a much higher ROI from those things that do feel more accessible. They may be a bit scarier at the start, but they tend to burn us out a little bit less. We can manage our social battery. And I'm saying this very generally. I recognize that there's, potentially privilege coming through my words. So I just want to preface it with that. But when we focus on a relationship, we get to release some of the ick that comes with typical sales that make us feel like we're trying to convince and manipulate. We are simply having a conversation with another human and maybe getting some data from it that we can then use to help them make a better decision.
Yeah, exactly. And I think when we just simplify it and break it down, you're having a conversation. This is not a scary, you have conversations all the time. You have
Exactly.
conversations with your significant other. You have conversations, with your kids, with your dog, whoever. There's conversations being happened and you can continue them and you can grow. And I think when we push ourselves outside in our conversations, there is growth within us that happen because we go, ooh, that's really good. Because I used to say, oh my gosh, I can't have conversations. Like, I'm really bad at asking questions. I can't ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
Then I got going, well, why am I bad at asking questions? Because I was silenced as an introvert because I was shy and quiet and was told not to. So once I released that and went, no, guess what? I ask questions. I get curious and I am like a child. And I will say, how many times do your kids ask a question? Thousands of times a day because they're learning and like
Yes.
they're little sponges. So I always say, get curious like a kid and be a sponge when you're in your conversations. And you don't have to have 20 conversations in a day. I say 1, 2, because those conversations can be really good. And sometimes that's all your energy is good for.
And that's why, like, I really do love the concept of utilizing Instagram DMs, because you can manage your social battery based on, it's like, we're going to message you in 24 hours because I can't right now. And that's okay. Like, it's still a very safe space if you're going in with that mentality. And you brought something up just a moment ago. Oh, I know what it was. So sorry, ADHD. So I utilize my ADHD as a playful excuse sometimes, right? If someone talks to me about my hyperfixation, I want nothing more than to talk to them about my hyperfixation. So I just imagine that my business is my hyperfixation, but that this person actually, in fact, wants me to talk about my hyperfixation. But I want to know what they know first. I want to know all about the information that they figured out first, their business, because I'm a business person. I want to know about their business. I want to know about their offers. I want to know if they sell in the DMs. I want to know where they're income. So that helps me get all that information so that then I can gush about my hyperfixation. So my particular strategy that works for me and my brain is getting playful, right? But that's just who I am. I'm a quirky, ridiculous person. But on days when my 4-year-old has had a tough day at school and she just wants to paint and have her time with me and she wants to sit in my lap and drain all that energy from me straight into her, I can take that time and I can switch the method in my brain to say, you know what? I'm going to let them talk about themselves because I don't have the energy to talk about me. And I get to the same result. It's having those strategies in your brain that you can flip between based on your needs. I've kind of gone off on tangents, but I needed to get that out there.
I absolutely love that because it's so true. We can, first of all, people love to talk about themselves. When we just realize and let them talk about themselves. And I think that's the key thing is you have to give them permission to talk about themselves.
Oh, yeah.
So ask a few questions because, I have 2 boys, 10 and 7. And so it's a lot some days. They need me. They don't need me. They don't want that snack. They want this snack. And the mental capacity sometimes of running a household, running a business, I also work a part-time job, is a lot up in the brain. And so when I go, hey, I'm in my DMs, I am focused in on that because I have allotted myself that time. And then the rest of the time I'm like, yeah, I'll catch up. And then I'm just going to ask a simple question and let them take it over. And really going, I don't have to be in there all the time. My energy can ebb and flow, and acknowledging the ebb and flow of the energy.
Exactly. One of the things that I notice my clients sort of freaking out with in their DMs was that the time that they got to themselves was really like late at night. I noticed this with myself, right? So my daughter's in bed and now I'm in my bed and I can finally get 5 minutes to myself.
Yeah.
And I feel like as entrepreneurs, we tend to do that. That's when we do our best thinking, when we're trying to go to sleep. Yeah. And so the one piece, so you can schedule messages in Instagram and all that thing, but a lot of times we can say much easier than we can type. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things I built into Foresight HQ for myself was the ability to schedule voice notes. Because sometimes it's two different parts of your brain, right? When you're speaking versus when you're writing are two different parts of your brain. That's why they always say to say out loud what you're writing, because it activates your whole brain. Well, sometimes you don't have the capacity to type out what you want to say to these people. It's much easier to speak it. And so, like, I'm giving you permission here, not that you need it, but I'm giving everyone permission. It's easier to send a voice note. No one is going to think differently of you. In fact, they're probably going to love it. I sell Foresight HQ almost exclusively through affiliates. And the first reach out is almost always a voice note, because it's just so much easier to communicate tone. As introverts, we absorb that stuff. We know it inherently, but we forget that others operate the same way. Voice notes are a beautiful way to start that relationship.
Yeah, voice notes are so powerful. And I also really enjoy too, because I like to listen to it, but then I love to see the words because I pick up. And I love that now Instagram has transcriptions.
I was so thankful to use that.
So great, because then maybe I read it first and listen to it when I have quiet time.
Exactly.
So there is such a beautiful tool that we can use. And I really am a big proponent of voice notes when we are able to, is really to speak out. And I don't care if your kids yelling in the background, so's mine. So let's just do it, because sometimes we are making supper or something and we are getting it and the ideas are flowing and we need to. Mine is usually while I'm driving.
Yeah.
And I can't type while I'm driving. So I need to voice note things. Yeah. And so that is how I can really function.
I saw an interesting threads yesterday, and it was it gave me a visceral reaction, but I would love to have a conversation with you about it if we have time. And it's someone was saying, and it's a service, they do some analysis for folks, but they were saying, no, my team will not be calling you from a crowded Starbucks or with kids yelling in the background. We provide white glove service. And I had a visceral reaction to that, because I was like, wow, I'm happy for you. Bless your heart. But I can run a darn good business with my 4-year-old running around me, and I can still serve folks in an incredibly powerful way, regardless of what noise you hear. But I also recognize that some people want to be treated in a very particular way. Mm-hmm. And I think that comes down to the kind of person you attract. And it's back to our conversation at the very beginning of this episode, where we talked about the kind of folks that you attract based on your content. If you and I are doing voice notes with screaming in the background or car noises or whatever, and we just flat out call it out. Oh my gosh, I'm on my way to CVS because my daughter's been coughing up a storm. I wanted to get this note to you.
Yep.
I don't need an excuse.
No.
And I think that's a beautiful thing.
Yes. And I have been seeing statements of where kid-free zones, and I understand that there are more people choosing kid-free, and I welcome your choice. That's fine. I have worked with kid-free people before. They're humans. I support them in their choices, but you also need to support me in my choices of having the kids and running a business. I've been running this business with a toddler and a newborn the last 7 years. I have been through the phases. And so it's really about understanding each other and the psychology of that. We are going to have different points of views, but how you support them. And, yes, they are then going to attract the kid-free people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's who they want to attract, and they can absolutely do that. Everybody can attract who they want to, but also recognize that you are going to repel a lot of people as well. And you have to acknowledge and be prepared to repel people as well. And that is another mindset. That's a whole other topic about repelling the people and not just attracting people.
Exactly. And I think we're still back to the core of the buyer psychology, which is that the clearer you are with who you are, the clearer you're going to get with the folks that you are going to attract, and the easier it's going to be for you to analyze the conversations that you're having with people and pick up on where they're at in those stages of change so that you can respond with the correct trigger to get them to take the next step. The clearer you are about who you're attracting and who you're repelling, the easier that analysis comes. And honestly, as introverts, we need easy. We need the social battery to not drain.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really just about honoring yourself and embracing that piece of yourself so that you can attract those people and really understanding the psychology of those people.
Exactly.
Which is really yourself. So.
Yeah, typically.
This was such a good conversation. Where can we connect with you to chat with you more and learn more about Foresight HQ?
Yeah, absolutely. So Instagram DMs are definitely the easiest way to connect with me. Kelsey E. Silver, don't forget the E. And, just send me the word Amber if you're not sure how to start a conversation. That way I know where you came from and I can just respond with quirky rudeness. Happy to just receive those. But if you've got a question about what we chatted about today or want to learn more about the actual DM triggers, I'd love for you to head over to kelseysilver.com/5signals, and I'll make sure that Amber has that link as well. And that is going to give you the 5 DM signals that tell you when folks are ready to move into your offer. But if you want to know more about Foresight HQ, it's Foresight, FORESIGHT HQ.app.
Perfect. I will have all of the links in the show notes, so make sure you go connect with her, send a DM, maybe a story reply to start that conversation off. This was such a good conversation. Thanks so much for hanging out today.
Thanks, Amber. Have a great day.